Hello and welcome back to Flashback Files, where we're here to help recent grads, young professionals, and everybody in between navigate uncertainty and career clarity. Today, my guest is Melissa V. Melissa is a registered therapist who started her career just on the cusp of COVID. Sports is a part of Melissa's story as she plays soccer recreationally, a goalie, and she has recently embarked on a competitive powerlifting journey. We're going to cover identity, resilience, self-leadership, and choosing a grounded career during uncertainty. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I'm really excited.
No problem. Thanks for being here. Melissa, before we get into the really hard-hitting questions, you want to give listeners just a little sense of who you are as a person?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. My name's Melissa, or my friends call me Mel. I'm 27 years old. I'm a registered massage therapist in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And kind of as to what Josh was saying, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've played soccer. I played competitively throughout high school and still play recreationally today. Um, I have been now powerlifting for about 2 years. And yeah, just living life.
Thanks, Melissa. So, you know a little bit of what we try to do here at Flashback Files. So, we're going to get into some early childhood stuff and we're going to talk about your journey in terms of deciding to become an RMT right through up to your decision to lift competitively as a power lifter. So, when we go back to your childhood, when you think back to yourself when you were younger, who were you in general? Like, what kinds of things did you gravitate towards naturally, just maybe as hobbies, interests, that sort of thing?
Well, definitely as a kid, I was a very creative child. So one of the first things that I really gravitated to growing up was actually arts and crafts. I'm an only child. When I was younger, my parents made sure that like I wasn't going to be a couch potato. So definitely using scissors before I could even write my name was something that I remember quite fondly, as well as playing sports. Like my mom got me into sports very young. Like I was actually swimming at 9 months old. And about the time I first started to walk, I was already like gravitating towards like anything that was ball like, whether I could kick it or throw it. And especially because the street that I lived on, there was a lot of young kids. So I was exposed to all different kinds of activities, whether if it was sports, video games, musical theater. I just had a lot of kids around me. So it exposed me to a lot of activities. But for sure, sports was like the biggest one.
Okay. And you may have answered this already, but just to make sure, what did you enjoy doing when no one was telling you what to do?
Definitely imaginary play. I always get like this stereotype, especially as like an only child, like, oh, were you ever lonely? And actually, no, I actually really liked being by myself because I had a very big imagination. So whether I was trying to do something with my hands, whether it was arts and craft or even with like sports, like even I remember being like 3 years old and like imagining that like I am playing at a World Cup match or something because I just saw a game on television. Like I always had this imagination that was like very big. So even though I was by myself, I was never bored.
Okay, I can relate to that. I would do the same thing, like kick a soccer ball at a shed and just pretend that I was a teammate of Brazil who just won the World Cup back when I was younger. When you were younger, was there like what felt energizing versus draining back then? So what were you just absolutely excited to do versus something that you dreaded doing?
I wouldn't say actually growing up that there was anything that I dreaded. Um, because I never really had restrictions on what I could or could not do. But I would say something that was very energizing was that because I was a big social butterfly was being around other people. So like I have a very big family. My mom's one of 7 kids and I have 10 first cousins. So especially like on the weekends when we would get together, just being included and being around other people I really enjoyed and just sharing activities. So that brought me a lot of energy.
Interesting. And your desire to be around people is interesting because of maybe what you do today. But were there any early signs, even maybe subtle ones, that you were drawn to care, movement, or just working with people?
I don't know if like care necessarily showed up really early on. Definitely that like I was very social. Like it's a bit weird because even though like I do value my alone time, I do like being around other people. I think it's more of like an energy thing. But I would say more when I got into like maybe my preteens, did I start to notice that I did start to become interested, especially like in healthcare and like anatomy. And that's where it kind of happened, but not as much when I was younger, per se.
Okay. When you were younger, how would people who knew you growing up describe you?
Quiet, surprisingly,
And how accurate does that feel today?
complete opposite. I don't shut up.
I think you're being hard on yourself, but okay, so you wouldn't say that you're quiet today.
I, like, you know what? When I look back, I would say, especially kids that may be labeled more as shy or quiet, I would say now that I'm in my 20s, I would say I was more observant.
Ah,
So, for example, and I would say this never really changed as I got older, but definitely if I did notice, like some, for example, someone's not included or whatever, I would try to have them be a part of the group. And I was very much involved with listening to other people's contributions, whether in conversations. I felt like I don't want to necessarily take over everything. So I was very much aware of my interactions with other people.
that's a great natural skill set. I could learn a little bit about that sometimes myself. So, let's talk about goalkeeping. It's a very fascinating position to me because it's the last line of defense. I think we'll get into that. So, you played soccer as a goalie, which is, of course, a unique position. What did that role teach you about responsibility?
Yes, because 'cause I'm thrusted into it. Ironically, I actually wasn't a goalkeeper to start with. I was actually a forward, believe it or not. And then I remember being I think I was 9 years old at the time. I remember playing a house league game, and it was the beginning of the season. The coach was trying to figure out what positions people would play on the field, and I hadn't played keeper yet. And I remember crying, being like, "I'm gonna mess everything up. Like, please don't put me in." And he's like, "Just do it for a half, and then if it's terrible, I won't do it ever again." Sure enough, I was actually quite good. And then as the years went on, I started to do one half as a keeper and then one half as a forward. And then by the time I was about 12 or 13 years old, I was a full time keeper. And then I really learned, especially with being by myself on a team sport, that when you're thrust into that position of responsibility, definitely you feel one, like a lot of pressure, but also you have to understand that, especially with the responsibility of being a goalkeeper, that there's so many other factors that you have to really be nice to yourself and say, okay, it's not 100% your fault. Like it has to go through 10 other people before it gets to you. Because if you try to have like this savior complex, like, oh, it's all my fault, then like you're going to drive yourself insane.
That was going to be my next question, just being the last line of defense. How did that shape how you handled pressure? So, was that something that you innately learned right up front, or did it take some time to really condition yourself to, say there were 10 people that I had to get through and it's not all my fault?
'Cause it did take time. Because I do remember when I was first a goalkeeper, um, I would feel, like, insane guilt, especially because, like, it's a very weird sensation when you, like, are trying to make a save or guess where someone's going to shoot, and it's almost like everything's in slow-mo as the ball passes you, and it's you can already see it across the goal line, and you just feel that defeat before it actually hits the mesh of the net. And I remember, like, would already like, my mood would change, and as I got older, and especially with the different teams that I was on, having my teammates also be very supportive, be like, "Hey, there's still 90 minutes, like, it's not over till the fat lady sings. Like, you have to keep going. You have to shelf it, we would
Mhm.
call it. Because it's like my mood would dictate a lot of the energy with the rest of the team.
Hmm. These are great segues because now I wanted to ask about, as being a part of a team, what it taught you about communication and trust.
Oh, yeah. Like, really, because with soccer, and even I could say with hockey, with having a goaltender as well, being a goalkeeper is a unique position because I am by myself on a team sport. And because I have the best seat in the house, really, my teammates have to trust me a lot as much as I trust them because I can see things before it happens. And then
Right.
also, I can still communicate as they're constantly moving. So whether it's like, okay, man on, or like a through ball's coming, or whatever, I also have to be their eyes as well. So it really enforced having people's backs, especially when there are cracks in formation. So we are forced to communicate because if you're just quiet, then like the team just falls apart.
And so, as a having those kind of early communication skills being built along the way, do you know how those did they present themselves in like a group setting? So, if you had a group project in high school, or even when you were going to school for the RMT, did you find it showing up that way?
I definitely did for sure because definitely when working with groups, especially being a woman, like to not people please. Like if something is wrong, like address it because it will poke its little head somewhere, whether it's a group project or, conversations with friends. So really learning how to be transparent and show that way in communication as well as active listening. So even when we talk with people, I feel like oftentimes we already think of the next thing we're going to say without actually listening. You're just saying it for the sake of someone's stop talking. So it really gave me time, like, it gave me a lot of experience to really process what people are saying instead of just being like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, just spilling out something verbatim.
Right. And so that's in the school kind of setting. And how about one on one with clients today? Do you see any connections between being a goalie and the way you work with clients today?
With the communication, yes, especially because people are talking to me about, like, their aches and pains all the time, and especially it's because it's things I don't feel, so I really have to be attentive, and also it says a lot even when I'm doing an assessment, body language, tone of voice. Is somebody comfortable when they're on the table? So definitely being attentive, not just with communicating, but just observing, and that's just kind of my job is just always watching people.
Right. So that's definitely something that's transferable from being a goalie with what you were
Mhm.
saying in terms of seeing the field. Interesting. Okay. In your late teens, early 20s, how clear were you about what you wanted to do long term? So let's say you're in grade 12 and you start to think about post-secondary or what life looks like outside of high school. If you were to rate it out of 10, how clear you were with what you wanted to do with the rest of your life, what number would you give me?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna give you 2 answers because I'm gonna tell you what younger me would have said and what 27-year-old me would say.
Okay.
Younger me would have thought, "Girl, I know what I'm doing. 10 out of 10. I got this." And then when I look back, I was like, "No." I would say, "Girl, you have no idea." I would say 6 out of 10.
Did you have it in your head that you were going to pursue an RMT, or was it different? Like the 10 out of 10, was it a completely different career from what you ended up with?
Completely different. So, actually, massage therapy wasn't on the radar at all. It was actually, again, an accident.
What was on the radar for grade 12, Melissa?
So, if I was actually to go back, so there's a little bit of a story with it. So, going into grade 9, I did start to get in like very interested in healthcare, and dentistry was something I had my eye on. Because I was definitely very interested with doing some kind of manual therapy, but not wanting to be a nurse. Because like I wouldn't like knowing myself, I am not good with delivering bad news or being in situations where like I know I would feel extreme guilt if someone died on me and my mental health would be in shambles. So I wanted to be in a career that was not shift work, not in a hospital. and not insanely stressful. And I started to look at dentistry and I was like, okay, this is something I could do. I did take your kid to work day in grade 9 through a friend of mine. Her mom had a dental practice. And then when I did see what it was like to be on the other side, I was like, okay, not really vibing with this. Then I realized through a lot of my friends, they kept saying, well, you're very into sports, into movement and anatomy. Why don't you look into like physio or kinesiology? And I did look at a bachelor's of kin. And then specifically athletic therapy at Sheridan College was on the radar because I would work directly in sports, but almost like a physio in the sports world. But it was a very competitive program because at the time, Sheridan was the only college that offered this program. And I was like very narrow minded thinking, like, yes, this is a thing I want to do. And because it was so competitive, I got waitlisted. So when I got waitlisted from the program, then I was like, okay, now what do I do? And that was the first time I would say in my teenage years, being so certain about everything, that I felt lost.
And how did you navigate that? Feeling like you had some certainty and then you just have this feeling of loss. And maybe how did your circle of friends impact or maybe not impact that in terms of maybe some friends did move on and follow through on something that they wanted to do. Can you just walk us through like how you handled that feeling of being lost?
Yeah, for sure. So I did confide with like my guidance counselor for sure. And this is when massage therapy started to pop up. They were like, well, you can go into other allied health, like there's occupational therapy, massage therapy, recreational therapy. And then my best friend at the time actually got accepted into the massage therapy program at Mohawk. And at this point right now, this is like just around graduation, and everyone was going their different ways, and I went back for a victory lap because it wasn't that like I was a bad student, like I was on honor roll, I was getting good grades. It's just the programs I applied to were very competitive.
Mhm.
And when the fall came around, my best friend was like, go to the Mohawk open house, like see if massage therapy is for you. It kind of sounds like something you'd want to do, but you know what, go to the open house, you'll learn more than you did before. And at that time, I never had a professional massage in my life, but then after doing the open house, talking to the volunteers and, like, the students and faculty, I never looked back, and it was probably the best decision I ever made. Because when I actually look back, if I had done athletic therapy, the job market for me would not have been nearly what it was for massage. Like, I had a job already lined up for me while I was in college versus athletic therapy. Like, the sad reality is that most people will end up seeing a massage therapist, a chiropractor, or what have you, just because it's a more recognizable profession. And in the sports world, it's more about networking. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So I may have gone back into massage or a different profession, maybe unsatisfied with my schooling.
Right. And around, can you maybe give us the year in terms of when you entered into college, just so we can timestamp things?
So September of 2017 was my first semester of college.
And then you ended college when?
Uh, August of 2019.
Okay. So a bit of a spoiler alert for those, August 2019, we're on the cusp or in and around when COVID might have reared its ugly little head. That will come up in our discussion. But before we get to that, what factors mattered most when you really think about choosing the path? I know you talked about, having kind of a sense of being involved with care, maybe physiotherapy. But when you think about things like stability, meaning, flexibility, helping others, like what are the things that really stood out to you at the time? Not necessarily today, because I know it might have been different now that you're in it, but when you
Mhm.
were making the decision to go to Mohawk, like what really stood out for you?
I think what really stood out was they had a fast track option, so it was 3 years condensed into 2. So, a lot of my friends at the time had gone down paths for jobs that either required a bachelor's or even a master's, and I could not picture myself being in school for a decade. I was like, "No offense, I wanna make money. I don't wanna pay student debt for the rest of my life." So, I did like how compact it was. I also liked how it was very specific. I can't relate to people necessarily who are in university, but for college, there is no, like, you can go so many different trajectories. It's like, okay, you want to be X, this is how you get straight there. There's not a bunch of other courses and stuff that you could take on the side or maybe have to get a master's. Like it's very specific. So I liked how clear the trajectory was. So I felt like that was very helpful too.
Okay. In the program, I unless you got 100% on everything, you might have come across maybe some more challenging, maybe it's an exam or an assignment. Were there any periods during your education where you were second guessing yourself in terms of whether you could do it?
I would say like I'm a very studious person, so like I did well in school, but a lot of it was really very much hard work. I would say definitely when we got to the neurology part, learning about the central nervous system, because a lot of that is just a lot of big words and memory work. So sometimes it just sounds like when a teacher's presenting, they're just reading off slides and nothing's clicking. So I felt like that was a bit of a hard time. But I would say the thing that may have caused some doubt was the concept of doing a licensing exam after doing school. So for listeners, when you are for most healthcare professions that is, once you are done the program, you have to have an entry to practice exam, whether it's a written or practical or a combination of both. So for massage therapy, you have to do a practical exam called the OSCE. So it's a simulated patient bell ringer exam. There's 7 stations. And then you also have to do a written test, the multiple choice question exam, which is about 150 to 200 questions on anything you could have learned in school. There is a review, but it's very vague. So you have to pass both and you have 3 chances. And if you don't pass both, you get remediated, which means you either have to start the entire program all over again or get a completely new career. So the thought of having this almost like video game big boss at the end waiting for me made me doubt myself a little bit because basically you can finish school and not be that said thing because there's still something else waiting for you. And then I would always question, like, what if the thing I don't know is on the exam is the thing that makes me fail? And then you go into the snowball effect of all the things that you could be tested on.
And so when you're going through that snowball effect that you could be tested on, knowing that we're aware of the outcome, you passed.
Mhm.
How did you temper the sense of pressure and keep yourself calm to be able to focus on what the task at hand was?
Uh, like if I was like snowballing during.
Yeah, like if you I could imagine you said big boss, right? So the pressure of having that big boss, you've done all the school and man, there's all of the pretty much all of the hard work is on the line based on that exercise that you just ran us through, right? The
Mhm.
150 questions, did you say a bell ringing dummy patient?
So we call it a bell ringer because there are 7 rooms with like a patient. So like there's an actor who pretends to be a patient for you. So you
Right.
know the situation, but once it's done, you go into the next room and you do the next exam. You just keep going. So we call it bell ringer because they literally signal you by a bell to move to the next station.
Right. So how did you keep yourself calm heading into that? Maybe it's the night before and the morning of. Like, did you have any exercises or thought processes that might have kept you grounded heading into it?
Oh wow, that's like a when I think of the night before my OSCE exam, that was a time because it was 6 of my classmates, we got an Airbnb because we have to do the exam in Toronto, and I remember us, like, studying with each other, and the vibes, oh my gosh, it was an insane night. There was also other weird stuff that happened, but I remember we were, like, not bouncing off the walls, but, like, when we did confide in each other, when we were looking through our reviews and all our study notes, we're like, this is, like, stuff I already know, like, we weren't necessarily nervous, like, we felt almost over-prepared, it's more just, like, the camaraderie, like, just saying, "Hey, we got this." It's the same like in school, we've done this multiple times because they do simulate the exam multiple times in school, it's just now this is just the last time. So having people to kind of break down the big bad instead of making this terrible thing that's in your head was very helpful.
I love that for listeners who are maybe in school right now, is having a sense of community. It's come up in a couple of interviews. That's why I'm kind of double clicking on it, Melissa. There's just that sense of having a community, friendships, people along the way that can relate to the journey that you're going through. Because I find that even today in my life, I'm a little bit older than you, just slightly, but like even today, when I get it in my head a little bit too much about a problem, it makes it way worse than just actually talking it through with a friend or a group of people that are going through it. I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, thanks. And specifically for like what we were doing, because no one in our lives was doing this very particular thing. So it also helps that it's relatable versus like no offense to my family or my parents, but because they're not going through it, like obviously they can be like, you got this or whatever. But like when you're actually with someone who actually has that empathy and sympathy for you because we're going through the exact same thing, it hits a little bit different.
Absolutely. So this is where we're going to approach the COVID days. You started your career maybe just a year, sorry, a month before COVID hit. Did I have
Yes.
that correct? Yeah.
So February of 2020.
What was that experience like emotionally and practically? Like, what did you see ahead of you knowing that COVID was on the horizon?
I was a little delulu about COVID because I was like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Like, we've heard of other things like Ebola or swine flu, and it didn't shut the world down. So I kind of just didn't think about it at the time. I was too excited with like having my big girl job. So the first month was literally me being so excited, like kind of getting into that routine and everything. But then when COVID did start to get bad, I really noticed it more within that first week of March because then I work at a very busy clinic. So then when patients were canceling their appointments, saying, I'm not sure about this COVID thing, if it's safe for me to come, then that's when it started to come up on my radar. I was like, oh, like I don't know what's going on. And then sadly, my area of healthcare was put into that big lockdown because we weren't in a hospital. So we were deemed non essential. So being unemployed for the first time, that's when I started to panic.
Right. And so how far into COVID? You started February 2020. How much time went by before the full shutdown of your practice?
So I think our official day that we were closed was March 14th,
2020.
2020.
So you had about a month, not even, of work, and then it shut down.
Yeah.
How did that impact the way you thought about financial stability and security, not having a job?
Oh my God. Let me just say first and foremost, unpopular opinion, job security doesn't exist. You can have a safe job, but you can be packaged out. Your building of employment could no longer exist. You can have a natural disaster, a pandemic that stops. So, like, really, as much as we try to think of security, it's more about adaptability. Because at that time, I thought I was fine. I actually was still doing my part-time job from high school and college, which I was a lifeguard for the city of Hamilton. And I thought, like, oh, well, I have another job. That's going to be fine. And then when that closed as well, because recreational activity was not deemed essential, then I was like, okay, now what? But then I was blessed that at least because I only worked a month at my clinic, so I wouldn't have got EI, but I got it through my other job. And thankfully, because it was unionized, all of our scheduled shifts from March to, I believe, May 1st, we got paid out as if we did it to buy us time for EI, which I know compared to my coworkers at my clinic because they were subcontractors, they didn't have that security because when you're a subcontractor, you don't have EI, you don't have CPP or pensions or things like that. So it is just you don't have that safety net, so then they were more screwed than I was.
Mm, okay, cool. But you had some levers to pull, and I'm gonna just maybe tie this back to something else that we brought up in other episodes. Is um not putting all your eggs in one basket in a way. And I'm not saying, maybe work two jobs. It worked out for you, but in general, when we think about things like investing or, thinking about using financial instruments so that we're not 100% reliant on our employer. Yours is a little bit of a small example of not being reliant on one employer versus, having other resources in life to fall back on.
Exactly, and even just, like, the model of my job, because, like so with my city job, I wasn't going to give that up until I had, like, a stabilized clientele, and then I would retire being a lifeguard. So I wasn't gonna cut a cold turkey, and also I wanted to build up the stamina to treat as many people as I could without physically burning out as well. But a big thing that I really stand by with, and maybe some of my colleagues in manual therapy will disagree with me. I don't like the idea of being a subcontractor, completely self employed, because basically you sink with the ship. So, especially if it was things like, even if we look down the road, like you are one cough or sneeze away from being on sick leave. So it's like, okay, financially, how do you pivot from this? Like at that time, like I live at home with my family, but let's say if I have a mortgage to pay or I'm about to like have other life changes. I have to think of, if something does happen, do I have other things that can provide me that insurance? Because if it's just solely you get a gross income, like, okay, how do you divvy that up in cases like having an emergency fund or
Mhm.
like having employment insurance? Let's say life with family planning, you want to go on a maternity leave. Did you think that, oh, there's going to be a time that you don't have income coming in? So that is something that, like, I always think about, that it's not necessarily about calling yourself like employee or subcontractor or even to being so dependent on someone else, but it's also about like how do you manage your finances?
Mhm. Strategic planning and that sort of
Mhm.
thing ahead. Yeah. That's, very insightful, very good for people to hear for sure. Do you so COVID impacting I'm slow with my words because I'm just putting myself in your shoes in terms of just taking on COVID with the profession that you have. Did it ever have you, like, reconsider, like, what success or what you valued in your career look like? Like, once you got even think about, like, once you got back up and running, were you even more grateful to be working than you might have when you just started your c
Oh, yeah, and especially to have a job, because I did hear about how a lot of people lost their jobs or, like, businesses went under, so really valued the fact that, like, I'm very blessed to be employed, so that really hit home because I didn't realize, like, when we were in lockdown how, like, messed up the days become, because I was off from March to mid-June, and then it started to become a blur of every day being the same, and you just get, like, so depressed because
Mhm.
you're like, "When is this gonna be over?" That whole 2 weeks to mend the curve, and then, like, it's May, and I'm like, "Oh my god, it's not done." And then I'm also rethinking, will ever anyone ever wanna come to the clinic again? Like, am I also gonna be in a profession that people don't feel safe? And I have to rethink, "Okay, where do I pivot now?"
Right. And over those months, was there any continuing education requirements or anything that you needed to do to keep your skill set up? I know it's maybe a shorter period of time, but, like, just in general, did you have to do stuff to stay fresh and with it in terms of your profession?
I wouldn't say I had to do any continuing education at that time. Like, we do have, like, a quality assurance program to make sure, like, you have so many hours to keep your license and making sure you stay relevant. But there was also some online conferences and webinars that I did listen into just to kind of hear what was going on. So even if it wasn't something like tactile that I could do with my hands, which most of our courses, that's kind of what they are, I was still engaged with at least trying to be a part of it on social media.
Okay. Staying connected as best
Mhm.
as you could. So we are about almost 6 years from that point in time in your career.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your career choice today, compared to when you first started?
Oh, I'm, like, so happy I went this way because I have a job that is insanely flexible. Um, Because really, I can go anywhere in this province with my license, actually, even to other provinces, and I will find employment. Like, being in healthcare truly is recession proof because as long as people are sick or have aches and pains, I have a job. Also, given with how AI is going, I know she's not coming after me. Not at this point yet. Like, ChatGPT, fight me. Like, you can't take my job.
Valid point. When you think about parts of your work that bring you the most fulfillment today, so if you think about a full day, whether it's because I know you work some long hours, what are some of the moments of the day that bring fulfillment to you?
There's a few, definitely like my regulars, because now that I've been in this profession for more than half a decade, like actually officially be 6 years this February. Um, the fact that I have had so many people follow me, it doesn't hit until I have conversations with them. And, people on the table will sometimes bring up their personal life because, hey, they're very vulnerable. And there's some clientele that literally I've watched them go through so many stages in their life, whether it was getting married, having kids, graduating, getting a new job. There's even families that like I know all the ins and outs of their family drama. So it's kind of like a telenovela when I can hear bits and pieces again, which is kind of cute. Um, and then the other part of that is even seeing the progress of some of the clientele that I've treated. So seeing what their day one is till now. Like I'll give an
Mhm.
example. I have a client of mine. She came to me after we all started to go back to work, and she was in a very bad ATV accident that she almost died. And she had her trach collapse. She had a collapsed lung. She was on life support for almost a month and a half. And to see someone come into my clinic that every single thing on the health history is crossed off and like is very dependent on other people to move. And now to see all this time later that she's completely independent, to see her day one and see now, and to be a part of that process brings me so much satisfaction. And it's like that's why I got into this career is to help people, especially in their most vulnerable.
That's amazing. You just kind of illustrated how resilient the human body can be,
Mhm.
especially while it takes important critical health workers such as yourself to bring the body to where it needs to be. But that's such a great story to hear.
Thanks, Josh.
Um, in what ways do you feel more confident or grounded today than you might have, let's say, 3 years ago? 20 2023 Melissa compared to 2026 Melissa. Where do you feel more confident today?
Definitely handling confrontation. For sure. I've handled that a lot better now than when I was younger. More so, it's not that I deal with a lot of confrontation in my job, but definitely, especially when you do have a patient that is very frustrated, it is very easy for you to be like, "Oh, it's not that bad," or, like, almost minimize it. Like, "Everything's gonna be okay," or "Stay calm," or have, like, almost like a Band-Aid kind of comment to say.
Mhm.
So instead, I've learned how to also, like, not just have automatic phrases to say when clientele get upset, whether it's about their progress or, the frustration, especially dealing with insurance or those kind of external factors. And also, it is very easy to become the starving healer. So, also being able to not absorb all of that intense energy because you definitely can. And this is not even just as a massage therapist, like nurses deal with this a lot, or especially if you're in any emergency service job. A lot of the sad things you see, you can really take it on and it makes you very upset. So, learning how to kind of separate that so you don't have transference.
This resonates, Melissa. A couple weeks ago, I spoke to Andrea. She's an occupational therapist, and she brought up emotional boundaries and having that. Like it's tough because you both seem like very compassionate individuals. So I can only imagine it takes some conscious effort to draw the lines and almost compartmentalize the experiences that you have in work and not bring
Mhm.
it home with you.
Yeah, like, I don't see anything, like, as much as, like, death, like emergency service workers, but, like, I'll use another example. I had a client that came to the clinic, and she booked a pregnancy massage, so it was already, like, set up. I had the pregnancy pillows waiting, and sadly, she came in and said, "I miscarried." So, obviously, coming home and your family asks, "Well, how was your day?" And it's like, "Well, I just had a woman cry because, like, she went through this traumatic experience." And then you can really take that on because 'cause you're supposed to be the support, but there does reach a point where, like, you like, not necessarily that I want to be cold, but it's a way of I can't take on everyone's feelings all the time because it
Mhm.
does become very burdensome, especially, over time.
Yeah, and I mean, just to put that in perspective, how many people could you possibly see in a day?
Depends on the time, so I've had days where I've had 8 patients come in, they're all half hours, I've had 6, so usually sometimes 6 to 8 people I could see in a day.
Yeah, in a one-to-one setting, it's, like, I'm just trying to paint a picture, like, it could be pretty taxing for you, not only physically, but mentally in terms of the conversations that you're having while, working on treating a patient. And I'm just, yeah, trying to paint a picture in terms of what you could possibly be taking home after
Yeah.
8 patients.
And
Yeah.
then even you have to think of the patient after, because like you can have a situation like I just mentioned happen, and then I got to be ready for the next person without that other thing necessarily lingering in the back of my mind or, making my mood off. So to make sure I'm also never projecting onto someone else. So when you think about it that way, imagine like doctors who they have all these fast appointments and there's so much going on and they just got to keep hacking at it. So you really have to think of how emotionally demanding it can be to be in healthcare. It's not for
Mm,
everybody.
mhm. And now we take you to competitive powerlifting, which may be one of the tools that you could possibly be leveraging to remove the emotional and physical burden that might be coming through your job. So can you this is a recent thing that you've adopted in your life over the last 2 years. You've been kind of sharing with me a little bit of your journey along the way. But how did it enter your life? Was it curiosity, challenge, community, something else?
It kind of was graduals a little bit of a few things. So I'll take you back to 2019. So I finished both of my licensing exams and I did lose a lot of weight from stress. So I lost over 15 pounds from stress just from prepping for the licensing exam and just the stress of being a student. And I knew that I did not want to be a part of the statistic that massage therapists burn out within the first 3 to 5 years of their career. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to be in a job where I'm helping people, I need to take care of myself because how the hell are you going to take care of other people if you don't make yourself a priority? So I invested in having a personal trainer because there was like around, this is December of 2019, there was a 3-week boot camp to learn how to lift, like just the basics about weight training because I didn't want to copy a YouTube video and hurt myself. And then afterwards, I did start to establish a bit of a community with the people I ran into at certain times I was going to at the gym. And I got very good at deadlifting specifically. So my trainer and the few friends I was making at the gym were like, "Did you ever think about competing?" And at that time, I was like, "I'm not strong enough for this. There are people way bigger than me. I'm just doing this for the health benefits." And the more people I started to meet in the gym, whether it was strongmen, Olympic weightlifters, power lifters, when they started to talk about their sport more, then I started to dabble into it because I didn't actually know what powerlifting was because I honestly thought it was like the strongman, like the Atlas stones. And then when I learned the difference between all these weightlifting sports, then I tried to pick, okay, which ones actually fit me. And then I realized quickly Olympic weightlifting, hell no, because trying to chuck a weight over your head, I don't know how more of them are concussed because it is a skill and I need my wrists. So I was like, that's not going to work for my job. So then I took on powerlifting as like the safer option.
Got it. And when you think about like powerlifting in its structure and how mental it can be, what has it taught you about discipline and consistency?
Oh, for sure. That like consistency is going to get you where it needs to be over motivation any day. And actually, I think it was like Usain Bolt. I think he had said in an interview, like, people cannot use motivation as their main tool to get somewhere because you have to be consistent. He's like, I trained 4 years to run 6 seconds. And people lose motivation the second something gets tough. And that's basically what it is because there's times when you're doing a prep that you are fatigued, or let's say you're doing a volume block, which means you're doing a lot more reps. And even though the weight is not necessarily your 1 rep max, but you're insanely tired and you really start to be at war with yourself thinking, am I actually strong enough? So when you're in a sport like powerlifting where you're just completely by yourself, I am not like in soccer where I don't have a team. You have to develop a lot of mental toughness and realize you just have to keep chipping at this every single day. It's not about the big jumps, it's about increasing your efficiency just by 1% all the time.
Well put.
Thank you.
Do you ever notice any crossover between how you approach lifting and how you approach your career? If you think about maybe things like preparation or patience, recovery.
Oh, patience. Oh my God. because I will say, like, there's times where I'm not patient because there's a joke in the gym that, like, okay, in between our sets as powerlifters, you just take a nap because our recovery time is long. They're like, "Oh, that person's hogging the squat rack and gonna just take a nap." But, like, really, it's true because it's not a race. It's really taught me to slow down, and that's translated in my career in the sense that I don't have to do everything so quickly. Like, I have my entire life to hit many milestones or whatever, so really powerlifting has taught me to slow down.
Okay, great. I'm just thinking in terms of how important that element of slowing down has been to you, like and maybe even going a step further. How important has it been for you to have something that's just for you and separate from your profession?
Oh, insanely important. I can especially say as women, just because statistically there was actually a commercial. It was with Always Infinity. I know it's like a menstrual product, but they talked about how girls are 10 times more likely to drop out of extracurriculars or in sports faster than boys, especially by the age of 13. Um, and it really shows how people don't have that third thing. Like they have their family life and their work life, but they don't have a thing that just makes them unique. And I really did not want to be ever in that kind of situation where I live to work, not work to live.
Mm,
And having that third thing, because not only have I had this with powerlifting, but other sports, is I've had that community. I've had a lot of friendships come out of it, the health benefits. And having that third thing has provided so many other opportunities in my life just instead of just these categories of being whatever role you have in your family or being an employee or what have you.
okay. Yeah, I got it. And I'm gonna imagine after a stressful day at work, has it helped release maybe a tough discussion that you might have had with a family member or somebody that you've been treating?
For sure, yeah, like definitely having some kind of healthy medium um has been insanely helpful. There is a sense of also like identity that does come also sometimes being with an athlete, and I can speak on this personally. Because there are some athletes that make their life also just their sport. So making sure that you don't tie your identity to one specific thing has been important. Like even though I power lift, I do have other hobbies because there will be also times where it's not that it's not my safe haven, but it also can be a stressor, whether it's I plateau or something. Realizing that I am not just like these labels that I put on myself is also very healthy with that sense of identity.
Mhm. Are there hobbies that you care to share with us right now?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. It's like I have shiny object syndrome, like I do a bunch of like other things. Or like I joke about this a lot sometimes. It depends on how chronically online you are. I like to say I'm like Snoop Dogg. I start doing side quests just because I can, like going to the Olympics or whatever. But some of the other hobbies I do, it's like I'm very into Pokemon.
Sorry.
It's all good. I'm very into Pokemon, like Pokemon Go, Pokemon cards. I like Comic-Con, so very into like anime as well. I also was very into nail art growing up, so definitely like the art aesthetic still pops in. I love to read. I love Broadway musicals. I'm a big movie buff. I love going to concerts. So I just love being out and about.
Awesome. And it's great. Again, something that kind of keeps you sane outside of what we do on a daily basis.
Hmm.
If you could speak to your younger self during that uncertain time, like when you think about 6 years ago with COVID, what would you say to her?
Like to Melissa
Your
before
younger
COVID.
self, well, Melissa 6 years ago.
Oh my gosh. I would definitely tell her, "Girl, you're gonna be fine. Like, just breathe." I know that, like, the world seems like it's literally ending, but, like, trust me, you're gonna be okay. It's just just get through the storm. You're fine.
Nice. What would you tell someone in their early 20s who feels pressure to have everything figured out?
Oh my gosh, like, you're just a baby. That's what I would honestly say. I have come across so many people for whatever reason, I don't know, Josh, you're older than me, you can tell me this. I don't know what it is about the number 30 that makes people think that life stops. They make 20s feel like it is this magical decade that everything happens. You gotta have everything sorted out. If you don't have it by 30, like, you're a failure, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's from previous generations beforehand that we place these milestones upon ourselves to think, "Are we going in a certain positive trajectory?" But I've also met so many people who've, like, didn't know in their 20s, their 30s, hell, even their 40s or 50s, and they've changed their life. I think it's a matter of, do you have the self-awareness to say, "Hey, am I just going through the motions with life, or do I actually wanna make changes with where I'm going because I'm not satisfied with something?"
I'll add, it's a very good point that you make, Melissa. I think for me personally, I can speak to my situation. I was so consumed with looking ahead. I kind of missed out on what was right in front of me. And what I mean by that is I've had a great life, don't get me wrong. But in my 20s and even in my teenage years, I can remember feeling stressed out. I needed to find a part-time job because I wanted to make money. And so the high school years, my friends would be hanging out at houses, going to parties. I dabbled a little bit, but I was the one getting up at 5 in the morning to work. And I think that kind of translated into the 20s where I got to work, I got to focus on career and that sort of thing. And I didn't do a great job of stopping and taking a breath and being present and really just enjoying what the 20s are about. So if I could say anything to listeners is like 30 is, you got, don't worry, you're gonna have a nice chunk of problems when it comes to 30. Like it's whether you think you figured out or not. 30s were interesting for me for a number of reasons, but I think it's just that in general, this whole idea of like constantly looking ahead rather than just being in the space that you are right now.
And I think there's a lot of pressure, and correct me if I'm wrong. When you are at that age 22, 23, or so on, this is the first time in your life you're not in an institution where everyone you know is like squished into this one place with a very structured schedule. So you have that from the time, whether you did daycare or from elementary school all the way to high school and college, like you know what every day is going to look like, you have your routine. And then when you're out of this institution, you're like, I don't know what to do. And then we all look at each other like, "Are you doing okay? Like, am I behind?" Because nobody knows what they're doing. Like, there is no manual. It's honestly just a it's this stupid thing we tell ourselves to think that we have to reach these milestones. And really, in reality, it's like we are all, putting it bluntly, just raw life. Like, nobody knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Just take it.
I'm gonna get you flagged. I'm sorry. I know we talked about I'm not allowed to cuss or whatever, but I'm like, bro, that's the best way I could describe it.
Do you think younger Melissa would be surprised by the version of you that exists today? Think about teenage Melissa.
Oh my god, yeah. Like, I look back at, like, a decade ago and realize, like, "Oh my gosh, I am not the same person," like, thank God, but I could proudly say, like, I grew up into the woman that, like, younger me would have protected, and I'm very happy to say that.
Wow. What a nice full circle moment that you just touched on there.
Like,
That's
I could
amazing.
Thanks, because I could honestly say, like, there's so many things I do today that I would have never pictured. Like, I know this is very career focused per se, but especially to have a lot more confidence. Even things that I do now, like, I never thought I would have been doing a powerlifting competition, let alone my third coming up in February. And even doing a lot of things on my own, whether it's solo traveling, going to events by myself, or even the friends I've met along the way. And I look back and I'm like, wow, little me does not have any clue who she's going to become. Like, it's going to be a completely different person.
That's amazing. So I think we'll end it there. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join me on the show. You have an interesting approach to work and your personal interests, and that's exactly why I asked you to come on and speak to the listeners. I'm sure you've given them a few things to think about when they consider their own personal journeys, whether conventional or unconventional. So thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. I hope that you got something out of it. Because sometimes I feel like I'm on, like, a soapbox or, like, rambling, like, "Does that answer the question? I don't know. What could you do in editing? I hope you got something out of this. If not, I hope you laughed. I hope it's a vibe. Whatever you're doing listening to this podcast, cleaning your house, I hope you just had a great time."
Thanks a lot, Melissa.
No problem.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode with Melissa. What I took from this conversation is that Melissa's story isn't just about massage therapy or soccer or powerlifting. It's about self leadership through uncertainty. From being a goalkeeper and learning not to carry a savior complex, to facing the big boss of licensing exams, to starting her career in February 2020, only to get shut down by March 14th. She's lived through the kind of unpredictability that forces you to grow up fast. And what really stood out to me was her perspective on security, that job security isn't something you can fully control, but adaptability, planning, boundaries, and community, those are. I also like the reminder that you don't have to make work your whole identity. Having that third thing, whether it's lifting, sport, art, or anything that's yours, can be the difference between burning out and building a life that actually feels sustainable. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.